Good afternoon and welcome to Tenet Talk, a talk show dedicated to exploring the exploration of truths, philosophical views, and the study of epistemology. My name is Tommy Kuhn and I am your host for the next hour. Today we have four special guests who will be tested on their knowledge of the famous philosophical perspective intermodernism. These guests don't know this now, but the world-renowned nursing philosopher, Dr. Pamela Reed, sent them to this show to prepare them for their comprehensive exams. Let's see how well they do today. Let's meet our first guest, a third-year doctoral student at the University of Arizona, Sue Renz. Welcome, Sue.
Thanks, Tommy. Great to be here. When do we get to meet the famous philosopher?
Later in the show. First, the audience and our viewers want to hear more about intermodernism, since we understand you and your colleagues are studying hard for your comprehensive exams.
Oh my, well yes, I have been studying but am not really sure I understand all of this philosophy stuff.
Give it a try. Here we go. Sue, can you tell us a little about intermodernism and how this applies to nursing science?
Oh, tough question, but here goes. Really, the person you should be interviewing is Dr. Pam Reed, since she discovered this new movement in the philosophy of science and coined the term intermodernism in 2011. She developed this philosophy to explain something between different modern views, and a pluralistic view that draws from other various philosophical views. Intermodernism was inspired by postmodernism and more futuristic views of nursing science. Some have called it an unorthodox view of nursing knowledge that seeks to blend nursing science, theory, and practice.
Sounds interesting. Can you relate to it as a future scientist?
Absolutely, since intermodernism avoids radical extremes and really fosters diversity and encourages new ideas.
What about the acronym? Kind of cool way to remember important aspects of this philosophical view, huh?
Yes. The acronym represents the tenets. I can only remember three of them: openness, discovery, and epistemology.
Not too bad. Looks like you have studied a little bit at least.
The tenets are important and they provide a framework. Openness means being open to change, open to critique, and ongoing reflection on one's theory and practice. This is necessary to be amenable to change and is essential for knowledge development. As Dr. Reed says, openness sensitizes you to possible oppressive stances in research and practice. It also fosters diversity, which is embedded within this philosophy.
What about another one?
Well, discovery means that there are multiple ways of knowing. For example, abductive reasoning is encouraged, which means that knowledge can be constructed from experiences as well as inductive and deductive logic. That's just a fancy way of saying that there are many ways of knowing. Theories are neither random or come from nothing at all.
This is deep stuff, but it feels very freeing to think this way.
Yes, and also what I like is that intermodernism expands epistemology in that science and practice partner together, instead of practice merely being where knowledge gets deposited. Since we are all clinicians, this means a lot to us, as we also believe, like Dr. Reed, that practice is a source of knowledge and will inspire new knowledge as well.
How about another one?
I could only remember three. Can I ask a colleague for help? Sandy? Ryan? Sherry? Hi. I would be happy to come and expound upon Sue's known tenets of intermodernism.
Excellent. And your name, please?
Oh, sorry, my name is Sherry Lawson and I'm a classmate of Sue.
Great. So can you tell us about the rest of the tenets of intermodernism?
Oh no. Like Sue, I can only remember three of the tenets related to intermodernism.
And what are the three you remember?
I believe there is in-betweenness, nursing, and truth.
That is a good start. This in-betweenness that you speak of sounds interesting. Can you tell me more about that?
Well, a good friend of mine always says the virtue is in the middle, and I think this applies to this tenet. Theorists are able to bounce between modernism and postmodernism and not be limited by the strict concepts of either. Intermodernism builds on and is able to expand and allow other theories to exist without being incorporated into one right view. One could say that intermodernism is an open concept and allows theorists to shift between extremes and contradictions. Pam Reed, states that Intermodernism honors the wisdom of the middle way. It promotes science and practice partnering together. As a clinician, I can actually get a grasp on this concept. Truly, this theory is very congruent to evidence-based practice. Within Intermodernism thought, the practitioner is not merely the knowledge consumer or user but is a knowledge producer.
Wow, you have really been reading up on this theory. So tell me, how does this theory relate to nursing? That is very exciting. It sounds like it opens up nursing to explore other ways of knowing.
Oh yes. It is very exciting in that. The Fawcett state in order to continuously develop as a profession you must have the capacity to embrace change and learn and grow from it. I think this last quote sums it up pretty nicely in that as nurse scientists we are also nurse practitioners and should find ways to incorporate both of these to further develop nursing knowledge to advance nursing as a whole.
Did you say you had other information in regards to intermodernism?
I only know one more tenet and that is truth. Intermodernism states that not all truth is concrete but must be continuously questioned and if changes need to be made then so be it. Intermodernism is based on the assumption that we no longer reach a goal of universal truth but have the option of individual uniqueness and local truth. This circles us back to the open concept of this theory that allows us to go beyond ourselves in an ever-changing profession.
Great, well done. Can you tell me more?
That is about all I know, which is good for me as this philosophy stuff is really hard to grasp. My other colleagues are here though. Sandy? Hello, Tommy. It is a pleasure to meet the son of the famous philosopher Thomas Kuhn. I would love to hear more about your childhood, growing up in Cincinnati. But I realize we are here to discuss intermodernism. I am also very anxious to meet our mystery guest.
Well, thank you Sandy for asking about my father. I do recall many conversations with him as a child about innovative puzzle solving, revolutions and paradigms. It took me a while to figure out that the puzzles were really ways of thinking and knowing. The revolutions involved new ways of thinking or viewing what we now call paradigm shifts, and the paradigms were not two dimes. But enough about me. Tell me which of the tenets of intermodernism you have explored.
I find the intermodernist view of nursing theory to hold many tenets that are consistent with my views of nursing science and practice. The tenet of romanticism, for instance, incorporates the metaphysical elements of the human experience and the non-epistemic elements of socio-cultural and emotional values. To me, these elements of the human experience must be incorporated into any exploration of health and wellness in individuals and in groups of individuals.
It seems the tenet of romanticism is much broader than the views of my father.
Actually, Tommy, romanticism embraces a much more childlike view of the world, with an openness to new ways of knowing. The ontology of the romantic view incorporates intuition, imagination, affect, and kinesthesia. Spirituality is a key component of the romantic tenet. I know Dr. Reed has studied the concept of spirituality as it relates to well-being.
I can see that this theory includes a more modern view of the human experience. Are there any historic tenets of intermodernism?
Well, actually, the other tenet I am exploring is Nightingale. As you may have heard from your father, Florence Nightingale was a pioneer in nursing. The tenet of Nightingale within intermodernism strives to reclaim elements of classic theorists and nursing scholars, or indigenous knowledge, in particular the holistic approach to nursing. For example, although Miss Nightingale was an empiricist, she introduced the concept of individuals engaging in wellness behaviors, what we now refer to as empowerment.
Sandy, thank you so much for joining us today. It has been a real pleasure to meet you. How about we bring out the last student? Ryan, come on out.
Tommy, I am so happy to be here discussing intermodernism. It is my favorite nursing philosophy and I can't wait to meet the mystery guest.
We are all excited as well, so let's talk about the remaining tenets and try to bring this all together before our special guest comes out. What tenets are you going to tell us about?
The three tenets I am going to talk about are empiricism, reality, and methods. Let's start with empiricism. It is based on a belief that nursing evidence includes both subjective and objective data and that patients and their families' beliefs are at the center of this discovery of knowledge. It also states that there are many pieces that provide that knowledge, including humans, non-humans, and combinations of both.
That is great to think that patients' and families' beliefs can be such a big part of knowledge discovery. Let's talk about the next tenet, reality.
This tenet states that reality is formed and developed through the experiences and interactions that a practitioner has with healthcare and the building of their knowledge.
That really makes sense, that a part of the philosophy is built from the experiences that practitioners have throughout time within the healthcare setting. Can we hear a little bit about the last tenet you mentioned, methods?
Sure, Tommy. Methods recognizes that science can be both messy and systematic, and that both are a part of knowledge building within nursing practice.
So, now that we have learned about all the tenets of intermodernism, it is really starting to fit together and make sense. Sue had mentioned earlier about an acronym. Can you tell me about that?
Absolutely, Tommy. Dr. Reed in her infinite wisdom created the acronym Intermodern to help us remember the tenets of intermodernism. I stands for in-betweenness, N for nursing, T for truth, E for empiricism, R for reality, M for methods, O for openness, D for discovery, E for epistemology, R for romanticism, and N for nightingale. Now that we have all talked about each one of these tenets, the acronym should make it easier to remember them.
That sure does make it easier to remember and to bring our understanding of this philosophy all together.